One of the most requested videos that I've had is on my LunarVim configuration. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. When you start up LunarVim for the first time, it gives you this configuration right here, just right here under your .config/lvim folder in config.lua. When I looked at this for the first time, I saw a lot of comments and a lot of explanation going on, and it was a little overwhelming, not too bad. But I was mostly annoyed that all my configuration was inside one file. Part of me was like, how do I organize this? And the other part of me was kind of weirded out, like, why don't I have like 100 different files? But don't worry, I'm going to show you how you can organize this configuration so that it's a little more manageable and not all stuffed into a single file. If you watched my last video where I talked about NeoVim, I explained how to set up LSP almost from scratch. And I ran it inside of a Docker container so that I wouldn't mess with my own personal NeoVim configuration. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the same kind of thing here. And this Docker file that we're looking at is pretty much the same as what I had in that other video, except I install a couple extra things, including, of course, LunarVim. And then I copy over my LunarVim configuration files into this image. However, I have gone ahead and kind of cleaned up these files. They're slightly different than my actual LunarVim configuration, but I've cleaned them up a little bit. It's kind of like how my house is usually in a constant state of disarray. There's always, like some dishes in the sink, and I have 3 kids, and there's always crap all over the floor. But when my parents or the in-laws come over, actually not really my in-laws, but definitely my parents, I'm sorry, Mom, if you ever watch this. We definitely, my wife and I, run around and clean up the house. And so that's kind of what these files are, is the parents are coming over to visit. And yeah, I've gone over with that analogy a little too far. So, all right, let's actually get this thing running. So I'm just going to run my little build script. And all of this, by the way, is hosted on a GitHub repository. And I will, of course, put the link to that repository down in the description below. Anyway, if I run my run script, it'll put us into that container. And I guess I should mention a couple other things. One of which is this zshrc file. So I'm using zsh instead of like bash inside of the container. And I have aliased vim to lvim so that I just type lvim. I'm a programmer, I'm lazy. But when you see me type vim, just know that that is alias to lvim. And I realized I said there were a couple things, but really it's just that one thing. So anyway, moving on, we're inside the container right here. And the first time that you start it up, it's going to install a bunch of stuff because I have a bunch of my own plugins that I've added on top of the core plugins that come with LunarVim. Then after TreeSitter is done doing its thing, I will exit back out of Vim, go back in, and now we should be good to go. So you might have noticed that every time I start up Vim, I get a new like welcome message, or it's not a message. Actually, there's a message down here at the bottom. But there's also like a different image, and I don't know why I'm going off on a tangent on that already, but if I hit C, and of course I forgot to turn on Keycaster, but what we were looking at was my dashboard, which if I open up which-key just by hitting space, I can get back to my dashboard by hitting A. Then I have a couple menu options here. Some of these shipped with LunarVim, and some of them I added myself. For instance, this color scheme one, it seems like I'm always going and tweaking my color scheme. Although I haven't really lately. I actually really like the default LunarVim color scheme. It's just called Lunar, and I think it does an excellent job. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's just go back to my config.lua. So this config.lua looks very different than what you get right after installing LunarVim. And you can see that I've actually split it out into a bunch of different files. So my config.lua is right here, and then all I've done is created a Lua folder, and inside there added a user folder. And then these are all the different files that I've created and split my configuration out so that it's grouped by plugin or by functionality. So I think we'll just kind of work our way down the list here. And that means we'll start with plugins.lua. So I've added quite a few of my own plugins. First one here has to do with Copilot. This one is different than the official Copilot NeoVim plugin, but I really like this because it also has this plugin, Copilot Comp, or completions, and I personally like how these completions work better than the default Copilot setup. I find the way that Copilot just kind of like inserts a ton of text and just like throws a ton of crap on your screen all at once. I find that really distracting. And so I really like how this plugin works, which it just provides the Copilot suggestions as completions, right? So I have my which key set up so that I can do space and then capital G, yep, for GitHub Copilot. And then I can toggle this auto trigger. So let's see, I'll do like local foo equals, and then, oh, I'm not authenticated. Okay, I'm gonna hop out of the Docker image just to show you like what I'm talking about here. So this is not in Docker, this is on my actual operating system. And if I toggle GitHub Copilot, and then, so it provides some ghost text right there. And this like isn't that bad, there's not a lot there, but you know, this can like span several lines. And like I said, I find that really distracting. However, if let's turn that back off, and then I'll say local, whatever, then right here, I have a completion suggestion that is coming from Copilot. And I find that to be a lot less distracting, although most of the time it only will give me like one line at a time of suggestions, which is kind of annoying when like I do want it to just give me a bunch of lines all at once. And occasionally it will give me several lines at once. As you can see, like over here in this little window, like every now and then this little window will show a bunch of different lines and it'll give me all of those lines. But I don't know, that's like a weird thing about this plugin that I haven't quite figured out. I'm kind of hoping that someone on the LunarVim team, wink wink, will figure this out for me. But I don't know, I've been getting by just fine the way it is, but that would be a nice improvement. Right now, I guess it's not working great either way. But anyway, going back here to our Docker container that I have LunarVim running in, we'll go back up to the top. And like I've mentioned in some of my other videos, I work a lot with TypeScript. And if you do also, then this might be a plugin that interests you. It adds some extra functionality for LSP when working with TypeScript that doesn't come with the normal LSP config for TS server. And if I don't forget, because I am very forgetful, then I'll revisit this when I start talking about the LSP config that I have set up with LunarVim. Then I just have a bunch of color schemes, and I just realized that I am mixing double quotes and single quotes, and now that's really bugging me. But anyway, there's a trouble.nvim. I remember adding this and it being useful at once, and then I totally forgot what it does. So moving on, this one is very important. It allows me to do, and it colors it. It's very important. And I like that when I use these different tags, it colors it differently. So I think there's also like fix me and warn. Anyway, very helpful plugin. And moving on, persistence.nvim. This is one of those plugins that like I just need. So if I go to, actually I just quit out of this. So right now, as you can see from the prompt right there, I'm inside this pets project. It's total garbage code, but it's just a little TypeScript project so that I can play around with some TypeScript code. So if I go inside of here and open up which key, then one of these right here, I have persistence.nvim set up. And then right here with S, I can reload my last session. So if I do that, it doesn't do anything because I haven't opened this project within this container yet. But if I open up like index.ts, I'll get an error right there, just ignore it. But now I've been inside this project. So if I exit it and then go back in, then I can just do space shift SS and it'll open up all the files that were open when I exited last. And I guess if I split this and we'll open up another file. So now I have dog and index.ts. If I close those and go back in and then open it back up using that shortcut, then it'll open up both those windows. And I don't know how I would live without that plugin. Like I mean, I guess I could live without it, but for my workflow, what I'm used to, it works really well for me. Anyway, going back to plugins. So that was persistence. Tmux-navigator. I absolutely need this plugin because I use Tmux. And if I have multiple windows open and I want to jump between all these different windows, when I jump up into this window, I'm inside NeoVim. So if I also open up a split right here, then I'm still in NeoVim. And of course, because I'm inside a Docker container, it's causing me issues. So let me just hop back over here into my regular config, and I'll open up a split right here. So right here, I can jump between these splits, but I can also jump down into my terminal and go between tmux panes and my Vim splits without any kind of issue. And that's what this plugin right here does for me. And if you use NeoVim and tmux and you don't have this plugin, I don't know what are you doing? Moving on, then we have Vim Surround. This is another one of those. If you don't have this plugin, what are you doing with your life? I mean, that sounds kind of harsh, but really, what are you doing with your life? Moving on, this I don't know what this one does. Auto tag gives you auto tags. This seems like a plugin that should be a core plugin. Vim repeat, also very important. Harpoon. This plugin, Harpoon, I feel like there are some quality of life features that it's missing, but when I'm working in a couple of the same files and I just need to like jump between a bunch of the same files very quickly, it's very simple and it gets the job done. Next we have hop.nvim, and this is probably one of my favorite plugins. It might be becoming my favorite plugin. There was another one that I was using that's very similar called leap.nvim, but I switched back to this one because hop.nvim can do some things that leap.nvim could not do. So like if I'm on this line right here and there's a bunch of single quotes on this line, and let's say that I want to jump to one of these single quotes and it's not the first single quote, then with hop.nvim, I can do F for find and then hit single quote, and it'll highlight all the different single quotes that are on this line and allow me to jump to any of them. So if I wanted to jump to like the single quote where D is, then I'd hit D and jump straight to that single quote. And that also works with other motions like deleting stuff. So let's say that I wanted to delete all of this stuff right here. Then instead of doing something like selecting all this stuff like I just did, which really sucks and is really slow, or some other kind of mental gymnastics, like, I don't know, delete inner quotes and then doing that, or I don't know, something like that. Instead, because of hop.nvim, I can do DT single quote, and then, so delete to single quote, and then in this case, the D, and it'll do that for me. Although I just realized that I also could just do like that. I don't know. It's a great plugin. And lastly, we have this NeoVim trevj. It's a very interesting name, but let's see, I need a good example for this plugin. So if I have an array or maybe an object that's on a bunch of different lines and I want to put it all on one line, then I can do something like highlight everything and then Shift J, and that'll put everything onto a single line. And that's something that I find myself doing pretty frequently, but also there's the opposite of that, which as far as I know, there's not a built-in way to do the opposite, which is taking stuff that is all on one line and formatting it so that it's on multiple lines, unless you're using something like Prettier or some other kind of formatter that will just automatically do that for you. But with trevj, I have a shortcut set up so that I can go inside of the brackets that I have here and do space J, that's the shortcut that I have set up, and it'll do that for me. It'll put all of the stuff that was on one line and put it onto multiple lines. So if I, using hop.nvim, jump up to dog and do Shift J, it doesn't work because doesn't like the import keyword for some reason. But if this was a const, then I come over here and do that Shift J, then it does that where it puts it on multiple lines for me. So not the most perfect of all plugins, but it's definitely better than nothing. And I think I use it almost every single day. And I think that about does it. I already talked about this one with code completions. And I feel like this video is going to be freaking long. But anyways, let's move on to look at some color schemes. So right here, I've organized this mostly because of this video, and this file was a complete disaster because I had basically every color scheme that you could think of commented out, but I put it inside this nice little themes table, and this is just some extra stuff for those themes that have other options that are available to them, and for the most part you can just ignore it. But yeah, these are a bunch of themes that I've used, and of course, transparent window. It's kind of nice. It just makes it, you know, pretty if you have a pretty wallpaper. But anyway, not a whole ton to look at there. Next, we have dashboards. So this file is where I have alpha configured, and alpha is one of the core plugins that is installed with LunarVim. And I honestly don't remember where I got all of this stuff from. I set this up a while ago and then just kind of left it and forgot about it. But if you ever were going to go and configure LunarVim for yourself and you wanted to customize the dashboard, then this is how you could do it. This is how I'm doing it anyway. There was this button function that's up here, but as you can see, I've just added a couple of my own things. I might have actually even gone and copied several of these options from the LunarVim config, which, by the way, you can go to by doing which-key and then Shift L. And then there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can do F to just look for file names. Although most of the time I don't know where the thing is located that I'm looking for, so I end up doing G and grepping through all of the LunarVim stuff. So for instance, in this case, I'm looking at alpha, so maybe I'd search for like alpha. There's a bunch of stuff in here, and you just look through it. And here, this looks useful. But anyway, when I'm not quite sure how to do something in LunarVim and I can't find anything in the docs, then I usually end up going and digging around in the LunarVim files, and usually I can find the thing that I'm looking for. Anyways, also there's these banners right here. So going back to the dashboard page, and you can see that there's some kind of like new image right here every time that I launch LunarVim, or I get not launch LunarVim, but look at this dashboard page. Those are coming from this banners file right here, which just has a bunch of this ASCII art, but it's just a bunch of banner images, and it just randomly picks one every time you open up the dashboard. And there goes my LED strips that I forgot to tape onto my bookshelf case because I just moved into this new office. Ambiance restored. Where were we? Right. Okay. So banners. Awesome. So what's next? And by the way, if you've been finding value in this video, consider hitting the like button. And if you want to see more content on becoming a more effective software engineer, consider subscribing to this channel as well. I'm still new to this YouTube thing, so that will help me know if I'm moving this channel in the right direction. Okay, so next we have options. So right here, I have NeoVim. If you're not sure what NeoVim is, go check it out. It's a pretty awesome project. I would use it all the time if I didn't hate the terminals within NeoVim so much, because yes, I know you can open up terminal windows in NeoVim, and I think they suck. And why would I do that when I have tmux? But I digress. NeoVim is awesome. I wish I could use it with tmux. Anyway, then there's just some other stuff in here. These are just the options that I have set, like format on save. This is a bunch of tree sitter stuff. I was just complaining about terminals, and yep, I got that there. This is for project.nvim, which is a plugin that I think basically helps NeoVim detect what the root folder is of the package that you're in. So for instance, over here, it shows that the root folder is lvim and not something like .config or root. But anyways, all right, so next is keymaps. So the way that LunarVim has you set up keymaps is a little different, kind of weird. It feels kind of weird. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. So the way that you set up keymaps with LunarVim is you do lvim.keys.normal mode, or you could change this to like visual mode. I'm not getting IntelliSense, so I'm not entirely sure if that's visual mode. Pretty sure it is. But I think you might only have to do it this way if you're overwriting keys that the core lvim files use and that you want to overwrite. For instance, here I just used the regular vim.keymap.set API, and I'm pretty sure this works. Yeah, so if I do gn, then if you look up over here in this corner, you see that I have another tab open, and I can switch between the two, and all is well. One thing that did get kind of tricky for me and I couldn't figure out once upon a time was when trying to set my own key mappings for doing stuff with LSP. So for instance, this GR I have set up so that I can list references to something. So if I go back to this pets project, and I want to see where this dog class is referenced. Then I can do gr, and that'll pull up a telescope window and show me every place that this dog class is referenced. It's a very handy shortcut. I'm honestly surprised that it's not just like a default key binding that comes with LunarVim. But anyway, another one is this GD, so go to definition. So I think normally GD is set up so that it just calls the vim.lsp.buff.definition API. So if we come back to this pets project, and let's come over here, and I have this walkable interface right here. So if I do GD on top of walkable, it takes me straight to this walkable interface. It's kind of funny to say walkable. It's one of those words that's starting to sound really weird, really fast, the more I say it. But anyway, so with TypeScript, there's this thing called declaration merging, where basically you can take two different declarations of a thing and like extend it or augment it. So I'll just show you. So I just need to type declare module walkable. All right, so interface walkable, although I'm going to export it, and then I'll just say like foo is a string, and now I'm getting an error here because dog does not implement the foo property. So I'll just make that optional, although that doesn't really matter. But the point here is that there are now two different definitions of the same interface, which is walkable. So now if I do GD, then it opens up this quick fix list that shows all the different places where walkable is defined. And personally, I find this quick fix list to be really annoying. Normally I love quick fix lists, but not in this case. So if I come back here to my key maps, I will uncomment that and comment that out. Now when I do GD, it opens up a telescope window, which I find to be a lot nicer. However, as an aside, I did just find out that there's this other shortcut for a telescope where I can take stuff that's in a quick fix list and put it into a telescope window. So for instance, if I do space st to do a live grep, and then I'll just search for dog, then from here, I'll do a control Q, that's 2 Qs, and it'll put all that stuff into a quick fix list. And from here, I can do space LE, and it'll take all that stuff in the quick fix list and put it into this window. Kind of a nifty thing that I'm sure I will also forget and probably never use. So that was key maps. This video is going to be ages long. All right, so next is which key. So I have a bunch of extra which key stuff set up. For instance, this alpha thing to show my dashboard, persistence that I showed earlier so that I can quickly reload my session. And I have a thing to toggle format on save because sometimes I don't want format on save to be toggled. And so this is just a quick way to untoggle that. Untoggle is not a thing. To just toggle it. Another one to restart LSP. This one I think is actually kind of cool, is shortcut for S. So I do a space S for search. So these are a bunch of different options for searching different stuff. And one of them that I added was to be able to search for the word under my cursor. So I can just do a space SW and it'll search for mappings. And then I have a bunch of stuff set up for harpoon, and I picked M for mark. Yeah, basically I have this set up so that I can do space MM and that'll mark whatever file I'm currently in. And then I can do space MT to show which files I have marked. And then just mark 1 through 9 I have set up so that I can do space MA to go to my first mark file, and then space MS to go to mark 2, and then D, F, G, Q, W, and so on and so forth to hop to all the other different marks. And I usually don't find myself using more than 4, but occasionally it's kind of nice to have more. And these I never use. Then this one I have set up for some window control stuff. So occasionally I'll have a window that I just want to like take up some more space than other windows. I think usually this happens when I have like a split open and then like another split open. And then I do like a help. What do I need help with? I need help with a lot of things. Diagraphs, because I made a YouTube short on that. Right, and then this is actually taking up more space than I thought it would, but I can do space WH and that should have maximized the screen, but it did not. What about space WV? There we go. So that'll kind of push all the stuff down and make more room for this window, but then I can also jump down to this window, which is now tiny itty bitty, and do space WV, and it'll give that some horizontal space. And then if I wanted to shove all the other stuff this way, then I could do space WH. And now you can kind of see over here on the side that those other windows are really squished over there. And then if I want to give everything equal spacing again, then I could do space W equals. All right, next I have some stuff for GitHub Copilot, which I've already kind of showed. And this one, nice, I can just do space X instead of the laborious Shift:XA enter. Really got to take care of my wrists and stuff, you know. And then I have some stuff for a telescope. So here I have space TP, and this shows me my recent projects. And you can probably tell that I don't use this one a lot because it would have made it a lot easier to switch between my pets project and my LunarVim config, but maybe this video will be as educational for me as for anyone else. But another one that I have been using is this telescope or zoom. So this one is kind of nice because let's say that I'm trying to find something in the LunarVim configuration files. So not mine, but like the core LunarVim configuration files. And I do space LG to grep for something. And let's say we'll just grep for a which key. And then I go, oh shoot, there was some other term that I was looking for and I don't remember what it was. And so I'll quit out of that and then find the other thing that I was looking for. And then if I do space LG again, I have to start typing out that search again, which can sometimes be really annoying, especially if I had just typed in some big ol' like regex expression or something like that. Then what this thing right here does is it'll resume telescope with the last thing that I had open. So in this case, I'm going to do space T and then R, and it'll pop up what I was just working with. And I don't have to retype that search phrase again. Moving on, next we have status line, which is, I don't know. I put this in there once, and in fact, I probably should have just left it out of this video, but there you go, that's there. And I just realized that I showed the dashboard out of order, but yeah, well, oh well. All right, next we have LSP. And this might be where some of the most annoying things, or maybe not annoying, but confusing, certainly unfamiliar with the way that you normally set up LSP with NeoVim. So LunarVim out of the box supports quite a few languages, and I so far have not come across a language that I needed support for that LunarVim did not already like have my back. But because I do so much with TypeScript, I find myself needing to tweak things a little bit every now and then. And so that's what I've done here. So if you want to configure a server yourself manually, then you need to make sure that the LSP server that you want to configure is in this skipped servers table, which is what I've done right here. And after you do that, I believe you need to run the lvim reset or cache reset command, and then you should be good to go. So these two things right here are just things that I found when looking around in the LunarVim files. And so I just threw them on here, but right here, so I'm using this TypeScript plugin that I alluded to when we were looking in the plugins.lua file, and it gives me a couple extra things within TypeScript. So if we go back to my pets thing, and sure, we'll just do index. I have it set up so that I can do my leader key and then Shift C, and it'll give me some additional commands that I can run while I'm within a TypeScript file. So for instance, I can do organize imports. So that just automatically organize my imports according to some algorithm that I don't know. Maybe it's alphabetical. Looks like it could be alphabetical. Yeah. Then another one that I like to use a lot is I have this import that I'm not using, and I can do Shift C U, and it'll get rid of all those unused imports, and that's kind of nice and saves a bunch of manual work. Anyway, back to LSP. So that's what this plugin does. And if you use TypeScript a lot, then it's a pretty handy one. Might even work for JavaScript because JavaScript also uses TS server, although I haven't checked that out, but I would imagine it's possible. And another thing that I do is I have this root dir set up so that it always considers a folder that has a .git folder in it. That means that the code is under version control with Git. And I found that to be just the most reliable way of making sure that my file explorer with NVim tree doesn't get all sorts of messed up. And I'm usually working inside of a mono repo, and so that just makes it really nice so that my file tree is not constantly changing on me as I'm switching between packages within a mono repo. And the best way I found to deal with that is just to consider whatever folder has the .git folder inside of it be considered the root of the project. And then if you don't use TS server, then you probably just want this configuration, or you can just comment that out and just let LunarVim do its thing. Anyways, and then next I have a formatter set up, and pretty much all of my projects use Prettier. And Prettier used to really bug me, but now I don't care. But you might notice that this says Prettiered instead of just Prettier, and that's because Prettiered is, I'm not totally sure what it is. I think it runs in its own little daemon. It's a lot faster than just normal Prettier. With normal Prettier, when I have format on save turned on and I'm in a file that's kind of big or a project that's kind of big, then format on save can be kind of slow. And just like a couple seconds, but even a couple seconds is really annoying. But with Prettier, like it's pretty much instant. And then I have the same kind of thing with this ESLint D instead of just ESLint. This ESLint D, which I'm pretty sure D stands for daemon. In fact, Prettiered, the D, yeah, I'm pretty sure that stands for daemon. And it's just ESLint, but way faster. Anyway, and this down here is just to make sure that my diagnostics windows don't get like ginormously huge, which they can. And then I'll have like a giant message that's all in like one little line. And so having that max width on there helps with that. And of course down here, I'm sure you can tell from it saying Copilot that this has something to do with Copilot. One thing I did gloss over was this lvim.lsp.onattach callback. So you could probably accomplish most of your LSP needs just by hooking into this onattach callback, which I believe gets invoked at the end of LunarVim doing all of its LSP setup. Okay, we're near the end. Now we looked at LSP, we already looked at dashboard. Now let's look at autocommands. And I don't think there's a whole lot here. Yep, there's not. Basically, oh, I have that set up to work with Packer, but I'm using lazy. Need to update that. Right now, I just have these two, and one of these I obviously need to update. And that was a very in-depth overview of my LunarVim configuration, but there's actually a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to get to, but I'm not going to in this video because I'm already worried about making this video too long. But there's also some really cool stuff that I wanted to show in this FT plugin folder, as well as some stuff that you can do with this LSP settings folder and this plugins folder and this snippets folder. But I will have to save that for another video. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Call it a wrap.